Since NASCAR introduced the chase in 2004, every year there's always that one driver who goes on a really consistent run and just makes you think, man, what if they made the chase this year? So today, I'm going to answer that question and take a look at who is the best of the rest. So the way we are going to do this video is like this. We're going to take the first guy out of the chase and put him in as the correct seed in the chase, and take out the driver who finished last of the chase or playoff drivers. Also, we are not going to do this like that one video the Iceberg did a few years back where he basically said Dale Jr. for every one of them and called it a day. We're actually going to go back, do the math, and see how it would have played out with the first guy out. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it. In 2004, NASCAR introduced the original 10-man chase. The first driver out of the chase that year, finishing 11th in points, was Jamie McMurray. The driver who finished 10th in that year's chase was Jeremy Mayfield. So for 2004, Mayfield is out and McMurray is in. This would also change up the seeding just a little bit. In 2004, Mayfield was the 9 seed, but with him being removed, this moves Ryan Newman up one spot, giving him an extra 5 points. Anyway, McMurray started the chase pretty decently. He had 1 top 5 and 4 top 10s in the opening 5 races, and would have been sitting 4th in points within striking distance of the leader after 5 races. And after a 2nd at Martinsville and an 8th at Atlanta, McMurray would have found himself in 2nd, just 23 points behind Kurt Busch, and well in play for the championship. But a late accident in the following race at Phoenix would relegate him to a 24th place finish, and this would drop him down to 5th, 71 points behind. But he would bounce back fast with a 4th place finish the following week at Darlington, which put him 4th, 61 points behind heading into the finale. So he would have gone in with a real shot to win the championship. But in the finale, McMurray finished 7th, which clearly wasn't enough with all of the big contenders finishing in front of him. So Jamie McMurray would end the year 4th in points if he had made the chase. In 2005, the first guy out was Jeff Gordon. Gordon had a very inconsistent year, which saw him record 6 DNFs in the regular season. The guy who finished last among the chase drivers was Kurt Busch, who missed the final 2 races of the year due to a DUI scandal. Kurt Busch was the 5 seed in real life, so that gave these drivers an extra 5 bonus points. But back to Jeff Gordon's potential 2005 chase run. In the first 5 races, he only had a best finish of 10th and had 3 DNFs. This had him 10th in the standings, but in the final 5 races, he strung together some solid finishes, which included a win at Martinsville. Gordon would have finished that year's chase in the 8th position. Not near as big of an impact McMurray had the year prior, and it definitely wasn't as big as next year's driver. In 2006, Tony Stewart was the first guy out. The last guy in was Kyle Busch. Busch was the 4th seed, so that gave quite a few drivers 5 extra bonus points. Stewart would have started the chase kind of hit or miss. In the first 5 races, he had a chaotic fuel mileage win and another top 5, but he also had 2 finishes outside the top 20. But even after his inconsistency, he still would have been within range of the lead as he was 6th, just 118 points behind. But then, he got a solid 4th place finish at Martinsville, and then followed that up with a dominant performance at Atlanta and won, and then proceeded to go back-to-back dominating the Texas race. This short run of greatness vaulted him into the points lead by 33 points over Jimmy Johnson. This would have put him in a great position heading into the final 2 races. But at Phoenix, he just had a mediocre run finishing 14th while Johnson finished 2nd, and Jimmy would have taken the points lead back by 21 points heading into the finale. And in Miami, Johnson finished 9th while Stewart finished 15th. And Stewart would have ended his potential chase run in 2nd, just 46 points away from Jimmy Johnson. This is a massive hypothetical because you have to think, he definitely would have tried harder at Phoenix and Homestead. So for me, this is one of the biggest what-ifs in NASCAR history. In 2007, NASCAR would expand the chase field from 10 drivers to 12, and would redo the seeding. Instead of being seeded based on their regular season points finish, the drivers would be seeded based on the amount of wins, 10 points per win. In 2007, the first guy out was Ryan Newman. The last guy in was Denny Hamlin. And to be blunt, Newman made little to no impact in the overall chase. He never would have broken into the top 10, and he ultimately finished last of the chase drivers. The reason being that he had 4 DNFs. Like I said already, Newman would have finished 12th in points, last of the chase drivers. In 2008, the first guy out was David Reagan. The last guy in the chase was Dale Earnhardt Jr. Reagan didn't make a huge impact in the grand scheme of things, but did manage to put up respectable performances in the last 10 races. He didn't have a single DNF and recorded 1 top 5 and 5 top 10s. Reagan hovered from the 7th to 10th place range for the majority of the chase and would have finished a respectable 8th place in the standings. In 2009, the first driver out was Kyle Busch, and the last guy in would have been Brian Vickers. Yeah, remember that chase run? But Kyle Busch would have actually been the 2 seed due to his 4 wins in the regular season, so he would have already had a little bit of an edge. But his chase run started a little rough. While he got a top 5 in the chase opener in Loudon, he finished 31st at Dover and then 2 weeks later finished 24th at Fontana. Busch would be solid but not great in the last 6 races. While he finished top 15 in all 6 races, it was just too little too late to be consistent. Busch would have ended that year's chase in a solid 7th place points finish. In 2010, the first driver to miss the chase was Mark Martin. Martin would be replacing Jeff Burton. Martin with 0 wins would be seated 12th. In the chase, Martin got off to a rocky start with a 29th place finish at Loudon, but for the remainder of the chase, Martin was solid. He finished 16th or better in every race, but just seemed like he couldn't break through into the top 10 that often, as he only had 4 of them. But Martin's string of solid consistency would have netted him a very respectable 5th place points finish. One has to think, what if Loudon didn't end the way it did? And what if he was able to capitalize more on those good runs he had? Could Martin have run for a championship? I guess we'll never know. In 2011, NASCAR would overhaul the point system. They would ditch the Latford-style point system and debut point per position, thankfully. They would also make a tweak to the chase system. Instead of the top 12 in points getting in, the top 10 in points were automatically locked in, and for the last 2 spots, NASCAR would have the wild card system. Whoever had the most wins from 11th to 20th would get the last 2 spots, and if no one had wins in that points range, then those 2 spots would be decided by points. Anyway, in 2011, the last guy in the chase was Kyle Busch, who was suspended due to a Truck Series scandal at Texas. The driver taking his place would be Clint Bowyer. Through the first 5 races, Bowyer was hit or miss. While he had 3 top 10s, he also had 2 sub-20th place finishes, and he would have been 8th. But in the last 5 races, Bowyer would actually get a win at Talladega, but then would follow this up with a 19th at Martinsville, and then Bowyer would round out the season with 3 straight top 10 finishes. And due to this late season consistency, Bowyer would finish a very admirable 5th in the standings. In 2012, the 13th place driver was Kyle Busch, and the guy he would be replacing is Dale Jr. Jr. missed 2 races due to a concussion suffered in the Talladega crash. But this season would be kind of different. Since we're acting like Dale Jr. didn't exist this year, this promotes Casey Kane out of a wild card spot and into the top 10, allowing him to keep his 6 bonus points from his 2 wins. This would also give a wild card spot to Kyle Busch, who had 1 win early in the year at Richmond. So Busch would be entered as the 12th seeded wild card. Busch's performance in the chase was actually quite stellar. Through the first 5 races, he had 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s, which put him 6th, which was right there with the leaders. But a crash at Kansas would tumble him down the order, and despite Busch finishing the season with 4 straight top 4 finishes, it wasn't enough to even have a chance at Homestead. However, Busch would bring home a 4th place points finish, which is really solid. In 2013, the only year we had a 13-man chase due to Spingate, the driver that finished last was Carl Edwards. The driver replacing him would be the defending champion Brad Keselowski. Brad started the chase in a solid manner. He would finish 7th at Chicagoland and then 11th at Loudon. But then a 37th place finish at Dover and a 17th at Kansas would take him out of the equation. While he would pick up a win at Charlotte and finish the year with 4 consecutive top 11 finishes, he would have only finished 9th in points. In 2014, NASCAR would introduce the chase grid. I'm sure we all know how the eliminations and winning you're in and all that stuff works, but the big difference was that in this time there were no playoff points like we have today. The drivers got 3 bonus points for a win, and the bonus points were only used in the first round. Anyway, the last driver in was Erik Almirola, who was in due to a rain-shortened win at this summer Daytona race. The first driver out was rookie Kyle Larson. Larson would obviously have 0 bonus points and would be the 16 seed. In the round of 16, Larson recorded finishes of 3rd at Chicagoland, 2nd at Loudon, and 6th at Dover. This would have been enough for Larson to make the round of 12 by 43 points, and the only real difference would have been Kasey Kahne getting knocked out a round early. In the round of 12, Larson finishes as 2nd at Kansas, 6th at Charlotte, and 17th at Talladega. This would have been enough for Larson to make the round of 8 by 15 points, and the driver he would knock out would have been Jeff Gordon, a driver that many thought was a serious championship threat that year. But now the question was, could he make the championship 4? Well, his Final 4 bid would get off to a bad start, as he was involved in a late race crash at Martinsville and ended up finishing 30th. Larson would have a solid week at Texas and finished 7th amid all the chaos and entered Phoenix just 8 points away from the championship 4. But I'm sure many of us know he didn't run well that day and got put in the wall by Ryan Newman, and Larson would miss out on the Final 4. Larson, after his impressive rookie run, would have ended the year 7th in points, absolutely wrecking the chase grid. In 2015, we wouldn't have as big of a difference. The driver that finished last in this season was Clint Bowyer on a dying MWR, and the driver going in would be Erik Almirola. You could imagine how this one goes, as Almirola was nowhere close to making the round of 12 and would finish the season 15th in points, only beating out Matt Kenseth, who missed 2 races. In 2016, the driver going out would be Chris Buescher. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw this one coming, as Buescher was barely a top 30 driver for the majority of the year. And the guy going in would be Kasey Kahne. Kahne would actually have decent performances in the round of 16, recording finishes of 7th, 9th, and 12th. These performances were good enough to advance through to the round of 12, knocking out Austin Dillon a round early. In the round of 12, Kahne finished 3rd at Charlotte and 10th at Kansas, and entered Talladega with a healthy advantage over the cut line. But unfortunately, Kahne was involved in a late race crash and finished 35th, and due to some drivers below the cut line performing really well and even one winning with Joey Logano, this forced Kahne to miss the round of 8 by a slim 3 points. Kahne would go on to finish the season 13th in points. In 2017, NASCAR would introduce playoff points to the elimination bracket style format. 5 for a win, 1 for stage wins, and the top 10 in regular season points would also receive additional playoff points. The last guy in this season was Ryan Newman, and the first guy out was Joey Logano. Logano had 1 stage win, which came early in the year at Phoenix, and this was his only playoff point, putting him at the 16th seed, already 4 points in the hole. In the round of 16, Joey would make it through quite comfortably, finishing 7th, 10th, and 15th. This was enough to make the round of 12 by 21 points and knock Ricky Stenhouse Jr. out a round early. However, after the reset, he was already 7 points down, and with a mediocre run at Charlotte, it didn't help. Then he blew his best shot to win at Talladega, and then had another mediocre run at Kansas. Logano would miss the round of 8 by 36 points, but would bring home a respectable 10th place points finish. In 2018, the last driver in was Alex Bowman. Bowman would be replaced by Ryan Newman. Newman had 0 playoff points and was obviously the 16th seed. In the round of 16, Newman had 3 solid top 15 finishes, but he collected a grand total of 1 stage point in all 3 races. This lack of early speed forced him to be a first round exit by 20 points. But this would set up an interesting dynamic. Because we took out Bowman, who in real life made the round of 12, this moves up Jimmy Johnson. So Johnson would make the round of 12. But he made 0 impact whatsoever and was a whole race outside the cut line. Anyway, Ryan Newman would finish the 2018 playoffs in 15th. In 2019, the driver that was last in the playoffs was Erik Jones. The driver that was the first guy out was Daniel Suarez. Suarez had 0 playoff points, and once again we had a 16 seed. In the round of 16, Suarez wasn't remotely a contender to even make the round of 12. At Vegas, he finished 20th with 7 stage points and then finished 9th at Richmond, but he was still nowhere close to the round of 12, and a late wreck at the Roval would put him out of his misery and he missed the next round by 27 points. Suarez would go on to finish the playoffs 16th in points. In 2020, the 16th place driver was Cole Custer, and the 17th place driver was Erik Jones. Jones had 0 playoff points and would be seeded 16th. In this round, Jones had 2 top 5 finishes, which makes you think, yeah, he definitely made the round of 12. But sandwiched between those performances was a mediocre 22nd place finish at Richmond, and this would cause him to miss the round of 12 by 8 points, and Jones would go on to finish 11th in the standings and would have been followed by losing his ride at JGR. In 2021, the driver we are taking out is Michael McDowell. The driver replacing him is fan favorite and the real driver of the 3-car Austin Dillon. Dillon had 0 playoff points and was obviously the 16 seed. In the round of 16, Austin would have actually been pretty solid. He had a 10th at Darlington, 11th at Richmond, and a 15th at Bristol. These performances would have put him right there around a cutoff. But with Alex Bowman and William Byron having great days, Dillon would have missed out by just 2 points. Dillon would go on an insane consistency streak in the last 10 races, only having a lowest finish of 15th. He had 10 consecutive top 15 finishes to round out the year, but this consistency would have only gotten him to 14th in points, just 1 point off teammate Tyler Reddick. Now 2022 was probably the one you guys were waiting on. I'm going to be real with you, you're probably going to be disappointed. But anyway, the driver that was last was Alex Bowman, who missed 5 races due to a concussion. The driver we're putting in is obviously Martin Truex Jr. Truex has 14 playoff points. He had 7 stage wins, which will be on your screen, and then he finished 4th in the regular season standings. His 14th playoff points would put him as the 6th seed. In the round of 16, he was up front at Darlington for the majority of the day before a mechanical failure relegated him to a 31st place finish. But he did get 15 stage points to remedy that bad finish. At Kansas, Truex finished 5th with 8 stage points and then had an abysmal 36th place finish at Bristol. Despite the bad runs, Truex would still advance to the round of 12 by 10 points, because there were many drivers that had issues that night. In the round of 12, Truex finished 31st at Texas and then finished 26th at Talladega, and basically entered the Roval in a must-win. But Truex finished 17th and missed the round of 8 by 51 points. He would end the year 11th in the standings. In 2023, the first guy out was Chase Elliott. Elliott missed 7 races this year due to an injury and a suspension. The driver he would be replacing was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Elliott had 1 playoff point from a stage win at the Spring Talladega race. This would actually put him as the 15th seed ahead of Bubba Wallace. But Elliott would be at a 7-point deficit entering the playoffs. But in the round of 16, Elliott would show up, an 8th at Darlington, a 6th at Kansas, and a 7th at Bristol. These finishes were more than enough to put him through to the round of 12 and knock out Bubba Wallace a round early. But to start the round of 12, he was once again at a deep deficit, this time being 13 points. But once again, Elliott showed up, an 11th at Texas, a 7th at Talladega, and then he got a stage win and a 9th place finish at the Roval. This wasn't just good enough to get him in the round of 8, this was good enough for him to lead all non-winners in this round, and he would knock out Martin Truex Jr., the regular season champion. But in the round of 8, him making the championship 4 would have been a very long shot, when he only had 2 playoff points, the fewest anybody has ever entered the round of 8 with. And also to start, he would be 19 points down. Basically, he needed to win or just finish top 5 with a lot of stage points in the next 3 races. But to start, the latter would not be an option. He would finish 32nd at Las Vegas after pit road issues all day, and then scored no stage points at Miami and finished 15th, and basically needed a win at Martinsville. At Martinsville, they would throw a strategy Hail Mary, but Elliott would have to pit late, and he finished 17th, missing the final 4 by a gargantuan 101 points. With Chase Elliott's valiant effort, he would finish the season 10th in points. In 2024, the last driver in was Harrison Burton, and the first driver out was Chris Buescher. Buescher entered with 2 playoff points to his name, obtaining them via stage wins at Kansas and Sonoma. Buescher would enter as a 16 seed, 3 points down from the cutoff. Now, as we all know, he punted SVG out of the way at Watkins Glen and would advance to the round of 12. Now, with 7 playoff points, Buescher would be seeded 10th, just 5 points below the cut line. At Kansas, Buescher finished 11th and then went to Talladega, won a stage, and finished 17th. He would follow this up with another mediocre 17th place finish at the Roval. Even after Alex Bowman's disqualification, Buescher would still miss the round of 8 by just barely 2 points and would go on to finish 12th in the standings. So in total, we have had 21 playoff series in the NASCAR Cup Series. So that means we've had 21 best of the rest. One thing I found very interesting was that every year the driver who was the first one out was statistically better than the last one in. The only one that was remotely close was 2019, where Suarez got in over Erik Jones. Now for each respective size chase, which one was the worst and which one was the best? Under the 10-man chase, which we only had 3 seasons of, statistically Jamie McMurray had the better average finish, but Tony Stewart had the most wins and actually had the points lead at one point. So you guys can decide on that one. The worst was Jeff Gordon, as he finished 8th in the 2005 chase. Now for the 12-man chase, the best one without a doubt has to be Kyle Busch in 2012. 2012, Busch would have got 7 top 5s, 8 top 10s, 864 laps led, and really just had 2 mediocre races that would have cost him the championship. Now the worst one is Ryan Newman in 2007. He never broke the top 10 and finished 12th. In the 16-man era, the best was Kyle Larson, as he made the round of 8 and almost made the final 4. The worst, like I said earlier, is Daniel Suarez. Now I want to compare these respective eras. These are the averages of each category for each chase field size. Do you notice what I notice? It gets progressively worse. This to me just says that the chase field has gotten too inclusive and it's no longer the best drivers of NASCAR qualifying for it anymore. The last few spots ultimately get taken up by surprise winners and mid-pack drivers. Anyway, this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, and I was just always curious about how the championship would have played out for each season had the top non-playoff driver made it. Now there's some seasons that are disappointing, but there's some that are fantastic. This video was fun to make, but it also took me forever to make. I've been working on this for the past month, so please support this video. I dedicated a lot of time to it. Now some of you I know are already asking if I'm going to do one for the Xfinity and trucks, and the answer is yes. The Xfinity Series video will come out this Monday, and then the truck video will go out Wednesday. I also have 2 shorts coming out on Tuesday and 1 on Thursday. And then Making the Chase will return for the 1988 season Friday, kicking off a 3-week stretch of Making the Chase. So there's kind of a content schedule for everybody here. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying to hit 4,000 by the end of the year. Follow me on Instagram. Thank you to my channel members, and I'll see you Monday for another video. Y'all have a good one.